If you take that first big step and you're going in the direction that is not right for you, you've squandered just all the opportunity of the MBA.
I was very much in this, at the time, in this grain of thinking that like it's all about odds, and if I just applied to like a bunch of schools where I had decent to high odds, I was gonna end up somewhere that I was proud of. And that was like wrong to think about it that way on so many levels.
I know you maybe better than anyone except your husband. We'll give Connor the edge on that
And
one.
my sister.
And your sister.
And my mom.
And your mom.
But yes,
so,
aside from
immediate family
my
members.
immediate family members.
Welcome back to MBA Monday. I am Angela Guido, the founder of Career Protocol. And I am joined today by Gray Young, who is a beloved client of Career Protocol, a recently minted Stanford MBA, a military veteran, and now a search fund leader in the music space. He's also a DJ, he's a music producer. He's like an all-around amazing guy. And he's joined me here today to have a really rich conversation about what is getting an MBA actually like, what's it like to transition from past to a radically different future, how can you pursue your passion through business school, and some of the magical ways that the MBA supports you on your journey to wherever it is you're headed next. That's what we're gonna be talking about today. We've been hanging out these past few days, listening to some music, and we just thought, I don't know, we're just gonna have a conversation and we'll just see what happens. Gray, do you wanna just like say a couple words to introduce yourself?
Well, first, it's really good to be here with you, Angela. I'm very honored to be a guest. Hi, everybody. My name is Gray Young. I grew up in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I went to the Naval Academy for my undergrad, and then I was in the U.S. Navy as a surface warfare officer for 12 years prior to deciding to leave and go get an MBA. As Angela mentioned, I also make some music as a personal project, and decided while I was at the MBA program to kind of reinvent my future around music and what my biggest passion is. So really excited to be here to chat with you about that today.
All right. The importance of goals and understanding what you want and what you're trying to achieve on your journey, I think really can't be overemphasized. Like, I think it's so important as you move forward in your career, wherever you're headed, whether it's to an MBA or through an MBA or without an MBA, you don't have to know all the steps, but you have to have a clear vision. You have to have really identified your passion, and then you have to have kind of begun to organize the world around those ideas through research, through networking.
The MBA is not like a little magic box that's going to take, prior you, put you through this 2-year little black box and turn you into whatever you want it to be. It's going to add skills to you. It's going to transform your way of thinking about the world, but that's going to be done through a lens of who you were before and what you're trying to become. And there's a lot that goes into it from your perspective that the MBA program is going to give you the tools and resources to do, but not necessarily do it for you.
Right.
And I think that that's a pretty big misconception. It's certainly a misconception that I frankly had going in. I knew that an MBA program was going to be the right place to do a transition out of the military, and basically have a time to learn that was a little bit risk-free and help start that transformation. But I don't think I realized that it was going to be so much of me going out and creating this future that I wanted to see. It's not like, oh, cool, you're just gonna apply to a job right when you finish the program because you've been to this program and go, get that job. You're gonna really have to create the world that you wanna see.
And I think I have so many things to say about that. It's a little bit like, you could use the metaphor of like, you're still in the driver's seat versus there's this comfortable illusion that in the MBA you can sit in the passenger seat and the MBA is gonna like take you there, and you're pointing to like, no, you have to continue to drive, you have to have the map, you have to chart the course. Just like a useful metaphor for everyone thinking about their career. But I I especially want to hear more about your journey to what you're doing now, because I've followed the whole thing. Like, we worked together on your essays. You had a vision when you applied to Stanford and to all the other schools you got into. And a lot changed while you were at the GSB, as it is wont to do.
A ton changed.
And then the place where you ended up was like so authentic and so perfect for you, but it's not the kind of thing you ever could have begun to write about in your essays. So give us a little window into like life at Stanford. What were the steps that you went through to go from, I think I want to do something like slightly environmental, to I'm committed to this and this is how I'm actually going to pursue my passion for music? Like, what were the evolutionary steps that you took and the turning points?
Yeah, that's a really fascinating, deep question that we could spend like the entire conversation on. But I'll touch on a few key moments in it, I think. As you mentioned, I think most of my essays and kind of purpose, I wanted to get out when I decided to leave the Navy. I was really passionate about climate. Obviously, I still am. I wrote a lot of my essays about and was really kind of oriented around this idea that like the Department of Defense was not necessarily living up to some of its climate change is our number one national security threat kind of big goals, and I wanted to go somewhere where I could actually have more of an impact on that than I could have as a line officer. And so that was kind of my orientation going into applications.
Right.
Then I got into a few schools, settled on going to Stanford, and I had a pretty big gap between the time I got out of the Navy, got into schools, and then school started. And my husband and I had moved to Napa for his job, and we were sitting down to dinner in our house one night, and probably 3 to 4 months after getting out of the Navy and before starting at school, and I was, really thinking about what I wanted to do while I was at school, figuring out how I could get ready for it. And I was like very serious about climate. And my husband kind of gently said, I have something that I want to talk about, and it might make you bristle a little bit. I think that the thing you're most passionate about in life, the thing that I see makes you the most happy, is music. And I think you should consider learning more about that and focusing on that at school, because I think it would
that's
make
a life
the most,
partner right there.
Yeah,
That's an amazing life partner.
I'm a little bit
there.
tearing up because
it's very inspiring.
He was right. I did say like, no, I'm doing climate. Like, you're wrong. Like, climate is a save the world, change the world. Like, it's a change the world type thing. I'm coming from the Navy where I was saving the world, changing the world, like a big mission impact type of organization, and that's the way my brain was set up to think about things, and I really wanted to do something with a ton of mission and impact. So I was like, yeah, no, you're wrong. And then I thought about it for probably 48 hours, and probably 2 days later, 2 nights at dinner later, I think I said, yeah, you're right. Switch had flipped, and he's right. I love music. Making music, engaging with other musicians, and everything about music is the thing that I'm the most passionate about. He's right, it makes me the happiest. It was not necessarily an easy path to try to figure that out at the GSB.
Yeah.
And
I know you explored like Spotify. You were looking at a lot of internships and jobs at existing companies.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that search. And then I have another question after that.
Sure. I found that it was very difficult to translate my skills from the Navy in working in such a traditional, established company, such as Spotify, like a big music company.
Right.
Because they were looking very, very, very specifically for people that had like 5 years of product management experience, but were also passionate about music. Well, I've got one of those, but I didn't have the other.
Right.
And it was relatively difficult to translate those skills from the Navy into ways that people could understand. At the same time, I didn't find enough mission impact in some of those larger companies. I wanted to have something that I was going to have a little bit more impact over than a typical kind of like product manager role. Not so much. That's not to speak poorly of the product manager role. It just wasn't what was lighting me up. I wanted to have something that was a little closer to actual creative.
Right.
I wanted to have something that was a little bit more where I could build a vision rather than executing on someone else's vision.
It's interesting. I think there's two really important things here. One is this passion for creativity. And so for those of you who have identified in yourself the desire to create things as opposed to solving problems, you have to listen to that part of your preferences.
Yeah.
Because if you're not creating, you will ultimately be miserable wherever you go, no matter how big the vision is. If you're not using your creative energy, you will be frustrated. I think the other thing here, and this is, I guess a lot of former commanding officers fall into this problem when you're looking at roles, because you could kind of be a heavy player at any point in an organization.
Yeah.
You've been trained in a hierarchy, you've had people above you, people below you, you know how to take the heat and the pressure from all the different angles. But my guess is that a lot of people are going to share your perspective that, like, I want to lead something. I've already led. It's not going to be fulfilling for me to just jump into the middle of something and be a cog in the wheel. And so I think that was maybe what that recruiting process taught you, was I love what these companies are doing, but I don't see a place for myself there.
Yeah, I would say that that is true, but that's very unique and specific to me, and maybe not necessarily so broadly all military officers. I think that one of the reasons why I personally decided that it was time to leave the Navy is because I was tired of being, like you said, a cog in a wheel, and that's not to say a bad thing. In fact, like, the Navy is actually designed so that everyone is a cog in a wheel, and everyone, including the most important person, is replaceable, and the organization can continue fighting once something bad happens, and there's a part of the chain of command missing. The organization has to be able to continue functioning, so it's perfectly designed for that. However, that was not so fulfilling for me, at least looking at the next steps in my career, and I thought that I could get a lot more control over what I was able to create and impact by going and doing something a little more entrepreneurial through getting an MBA.
So let's talk about search, because I think you kind of made up your mind really very last minute, like just right up at graduation time, of like, yeah, I'm gonna start a search fund, and I'm gonna go and I'm gonna look to acquire some company in the music space, and then I'm gonna run it. I'm gonna get investors. And so there's two levels here that I want to talk about. First is search is incredibly popular right now among MBA grads, especially at Harvard and Stanford, because it's like the best of all worlds. You're an investor, but you also get to be a CEO. You get to call the shots. You get to be creative. You get to lead. It puts a lot of pressure on you, and so it'll be interesting to hear about that. And just in general, what is search like? Who's it for? But before we get to that, maybe let's actually talk about how you landed on that. Yeah. Because I know you had a couple classes that really opened your mind, and you met people.
So I arrived at Stanford never having heard of a search fund, and that's kind of funny. I think it's gaining popularity, and a lot of people will know about it ahead of time now. But I just coming from the military, like, I just never heard of a search fund. But I encountered the idea relatively early on at Stanford, and it just lit a little bit of a spark in me. And in fact, it was a class, like an outside of class presentation, probably on like a career night type thing, from the two of the professors at the GSB who are, search fund experts, and who are also now both investors in my search fund, and Peter Kelly and Gerald Risk. And they gave a quick presentation one night, and I had heard enough about it at that point to know I needed to go to it, and it just captivated my attention because it seemed like it was a good mix of things that I knew I was already good at and things that I knew I wanted to get good at. And by that I mean the kind of operating an early stage or growth stage company, or even a mature company. The operating experience is something that I have parts of, but also will need advice and mentorship. And so the search fund model is that you will raise a search fund from investors that have different varying expertises. Some of them have done it before. They've bought their company, they've run their company. Some of them are investors who are have sat on boards of many companies, and that's the role that they're going to fill in your search fund and future company. And some of them are more institutional flavor investors that really understand the financial side of the piece. And that yet again is another piece that I knew I didn't have but wanted to learn. And so the combination of all of that, the chance to be a young CEO, the chance to be an investor, and to learn all of those things through a mentorship model from people that have done this successfully in the past, captivated my attention. It's relatively risky, as you mentioned, and so I kind of just let it simmer on the back burner and kept learning about it. But I think deep down inside, I probably knew on that very first night that this is what I was going to do. And then you are right that I didn't make a formal decision until probably 6 months before graduation. 6 weeks before graduation. I waited about that long to actually decide that I'm going to search. And there's a lot more to that. It wasn't just about whether search was right for me. I can actually walk you through that because it's actually pretty interesting.
I definitely want to hear that. I want to hear that. And then I remember what all your energy was focused on in those 6-8 weeks after you were like, okay, I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
It was like building your I don't even know what it's called, pitch deck, and then actually talking to people, getting investors, which is like a whole skill set on its own. And then there's so many other things that are coming. So yeah, absolutely. Just
it's fun because you at every single stage you're achieving a different goal, and you are building a coalition of people that see the world the same way as you do at every single stage, and it looks a little bit different at every single stage. And so for those of you who don't know kind of how a search fund works, I'll walk you through basically the stages. The first thing you do is you go get a team of investors, and you pitch them on an idea. Part of that idea is yourself, that you're going to be a good that you're going to be a good operator, that you're going to do well in the search, but ultimately the search is a means to an end of buying and operating a company. So they want to know that you're going to be at least have what it takes. No one enters with everything, but they want to know that you're going to be able to grow. I think having a growth mindset and taking feedback and criticism is probably one of the most important things that investors are looking for. I don't know. I mean, I'm not an investor yet, hopefully. So anyway, but yeah, so you build a team of investors and you raise a search fund. And part of that is developing a little bit of a thesis of how the way you see the world and what types of companies look good to you, what types of companies you would like to run, and then you raise that search fund. And once you raise it, it is a pool of capital that you use to operate your search. So what that literally means is it's paying your salary and your operating expenses, whether you hire interns, get databases, things like that, a tech stack, and travel, and a lot of diligence costs, legal and financial diligence, et cetera. And so you have about 24 months is how most people structure it, and you go find a company and put a deal together. It's kind of like an M&A process or a private equities type process.
It's so dynamic, right? Because you've got the VC, PE skill set where you have to think about a deal, think about the thesis, think about the financials.
Yeah, valuations and modeling.
Exactly.
It's a classic data skills piece of an MBA.
Exactly. Yeah. Then you've got to go and actually court investors. So there's that relationship sales component.
It's an alliance
to it.
Building.
Yeah. And then you're going to have to run a company, which is yet a totally different set of skills. It's super dynamic, really interesting.
So then you have an acquisition phase, and you go through the deals with your investors, backing after you convince your investors. So that's the thing. Your investors, when they invest in your search fund, have the right but not the obligation to participate in the actual acquisition round. And so you have to then go build another alliance of your investors, and some of them may pass because the deal you're putting together doesn't fit their investment thesis. Ultimately, you've tried to kind of make sure that you see the world enough in the same way enough as your investors that that they are likely to participate in that final round, and they're assessing the same thing. So like I think I have an unbelievably good cap table of people that see the world in the same way. We'll still get back to this, but that's one of the things that kind of kept me on the fence about whether or not I was going to do it. I wanted to make sure that I had a cap table of investors that were really backing the vision of the way I see the world in the future and the company that I want to buy and build. I'm a little bit outside of the kind of the average search thesis. And so it was very important to me to make sure I had that alignment. And if I didn't think I was going to get that alignment, I probably wasn't going to search.
It makes sense also because I've only had a couple of other clients go into search, but I know that of the people I know who've gone into search, you had a much clearer vision and specific kind of mission that you were trying to achieve. You're not just trying to buy something and grow it and run it and make it more profitable. You want to actually have a serious impact in this music space that is your life's passion. And so that requires investors that are going to be on board with that for sure.
So let me finish with the search stages, and then I really want to get back to this like decision to search. So yeah, once you acquire, then you operate the company. Averages are about 5 to 7 years of time operating the company before it's then either sold, taken public, or any other numbers. Some people, and I am likely to do something that's a lot more long-term holding because I'm buying a company that I really want to run. I'm not doing it just as like a financial kind of play, and a lot of the things that I'm looking at make more sense capital-wise with a long-term hold that builds value for investors that don't necessarily need to see returns in exactly 5 to 7 years. And so that was another thing that I was kind of controlling for as I built my cap table, making sure that people were more comfortable with that. Then you theoretically will have some sort of exit at the end. Yeah, you've kind of achieved
rinse and repeat.
Rinse and repeat. Start investing.
Turn around
in the future. There's all sorts of, at every stage you have a kind of the Stanford Search Fund study very, very closely tracks all of the kind of like the average success rate to acquire a company is like I think most recently somewhere around like 66%, if I remember correctly. Don't quote me on that. They just published a brand new one on Stanford's website. Then whether you actually operate it properly and create value or destroy value has another kind of percentage average. And so looking at all of those odds, and those odds are averages. And the thing is that like as a class, search has been very, very attractive. But for any given searcher, it's a binary outcome.
Yeah.
And so what sort of risk tolerance do you have?
Absolutely, super clear risk.
Yeah. This is it's a
winner,
big risk.
Win or lose all.
Yeah, but it's a big risk, but it's not the biggest risk that you can do out of an MBA program. It's a little bit of a risk-adjusted thing. So there was a little bit of a conversation there with my husband about like what level of risk we were willing to kind of take in my career for where we are at in our life stage, and with his career as well. And we decided this was this was well enough risk-adjusted with the opportunity to have a big impact. In the long run, but doing it in a relatively risk-adjusted way compared to some of the other things that I explored.
It brings to mind the question of like types of risk, because there's the financial risk, there's the chance of like, everything goes to crap and in 2 or 3 years you're basically starting from scratch. That's like one kind of risk. But when I think about risk in your first post MBA job, to me the biggest risk really is not making the step that's in line with your passion. Because it's like if you take that first big step and you're going in the direction that is not right for you, you've squandered just all the opportunity of the MBA. So I'm so happy that you landed in music, because obviously it's really your deepest passion. And so it would have been a much bigger risk, I think, to go route you wrote about in your essays, because then where would you be?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, like I would be happy, I think, but I wouldn't. I think I would be wondering, what could have been. So I also want to talk a little bit about. We'll go back to talking about like the decision to search and like why I took so long. So as we've already covered, I kind of agreed with my husband and went and tried to do music things and media things. Took some classes from some amazing professors. Ali Yurikoglu is an economist at Stanford who I took his class. He also sponsored some of my independent research, and I think he's a genius. So it was actually a really wonderful place to go study and explore and learn about all of these topics. And I did a bunch of other things that, like Startup Garage is a pretty famous Stanford class. I worked on an idea for a startup with a team of friends, and we explored some startup ideas in the live music space, specifically surrounding like booking and venues and promotion and concerts and live music, and ultimately decided not to pursue that for some reasons that were more about like the industry that we had developed in. I didn't want to like operate in that industry, not music more broadly, but the specific segment of like bookings. There were some reasons that it wasn't the right time to start the project we developed. I believe in it, but I didn't want to go be a booking agent for 5 years as I built the company at this point in time for where booking is. And that has to do with some like regulatory things and some legal issues that are like happening where it's just a little too uncertain of a time to start that project right now. But as part of that class, I got to, one of the things that you do in that class is you interview potential customers and users of this potential product that you're creating. And so I got to interview tons and tons, like hundreds. Me and my team interviewed probably 200, 250 artists, artist managers, booking agents, venue owners, talent buyers at the venues, and promoters. And we really got an understanding of how what the landscape looks like and the way money flows and what challenges artists are having. And that really energized me to figure out a way that I could help artists live off of their work. That's kind of like the new mission that animates me right now. Is I really believe that art is important and that musicians have a pretty tough time living off of their art these days. And so solving that problem, or as it turns out now, investing in and buying and operating a company that aligns with that mission is kind of my new animating thing. So for a while though, I was, as we've talked, I was really intent on getting into something in music. And I had this thing bopping around in the back of my head. I knew search was right, but I was approaching the question as trying to make music fit as a search industry. And that ended up being the wrong way to look at the equation because I was trying to pitch my investors, my potential investors, a little too hard. Because ultimately, I am going to try to buy a company as an investor, not as a banker. In other words, I'm not trying to convince my investors this is a great idea. Like, I actually am going to have more personally at stake than they will in this, and I don't want to convince them. I want to make a decision with them. And so what I've actually learned that on the other side now that I've raised the fund. I've kind of like learned that from investors is how to approach the search phase. But I think I can retroactively apply that to why it wasn't the right way to look at the decision to search. I have like this kind of crazy weird Stanford only happens at Stanford type moment that helped kind of really elucidate this decision for me. It was the final quarter at the GSB. I was graduating in probably like 8 weeks. I was in Jeff Imelt's class, and he brings in a bunch of CEOs and former CEOs every single week to kind of talk about a certain topic. It's called systems leadership, and so it's about like really big, large companies that are operating in such a complex way that it's like a system. And so it's some pretty big name CEOs, and one of them was the CEO of Goldman Sachs.
I remember.
David Solomon.
I saw the selfie.
yeah, you did. So there's also a little kind of lottery. Jeff takes everybody out to eat with not everybody, takes a small group out to eat with the CEOs. Everybody can go to one, but you get one, and it's a lottery to see which one you go to. But you can add some comments. And I don't know if everybody out there listening knows this, but the CEO of Goldman Sachs, David Solomon, is also a DJ. and music producer.
Pretty wild.
Yeah, and he's a very serious music producer. Like the news talks a lot about him, DJing in Ibiza, and like the bankers talking about having an issue with it and stuff. But he's not a successful DJ because he's the famous CEO of Goldman Sachs. He actually like makes really good music. He's got like 100 million streams on Spotify, which is not you don't get that from just being a famous person. He makes good music that people continuously listen to. And then the DJing is also kind of because he makes good music. So anyway, I talked about how like he has this very typical MBA career, but also has a music career. And I really wanted to talk to him about that at that dinner. And Jeff put me in the dinner. And I was just really thankful for that. And because I got to talk to him. And so instead of asking him advice on what I should do with this big decision that I'm approaching, I just asked him what it was like to have both his career as, his career at Goldman Sachs and balance that with his career as a musician. And he talked to me for like 30 minutes about it, but ultimately he said, it's been good to be able to have both. I have this creative outlet, I have this creative passion, and it helps me, be a more full person in my other job. And that really elucidated something for me. And it was that I was looking at this, does music fit with search? Was the wrong question to be asking. And the right question to be asking was, okay, I have my own music project. It is very fulfilling to me. I like where it is and where I can take it, whether or not I make music my full-on career. So now let's say, is search right for me? If I get to a yes on that, then I can more intellectually, honestly look and say, is music a good fit with search? And then can I build a investor team that also sees that there's some opportunities in this space that fit with their investment worldview. And so it was those three questions that had to be answered in that order. And until I figured that out, I was basically stuck trying to like convince myself and convince investors that music was a good fit with search. So
that's really
can go into like really nitty-gritty details.
That's really deep. No, I love that. I'm going to highlight three things. First is any of you who find yourself in your MBA program deciding to pursue search, bookmark this video and come back and watch that, because that will have made sense to you at one level as an outsider, but once you get into it, that was actually incredibly profound advice for people trying to find their own way as an investor, and it will mean more if you're in the middle. So that's the first thing I want to highlight. The second thing I want to highlight is just the complete embarrassment of riches that an MBA program is in terms of exposure to people, to inspiration, to ideas, to leaders, to mentors. I mean, you just name dropped like 6 incredible individuals that you've worked with personally, closely. And, we talk a lot about how the MBA isn't for everyone. And for those for whom it's right, there are so many benefits. And you just really brought that point home, that you're in this transformative environment where experts, but also peers, you're all working towards something great, and you can gain so much from the network that's in ways that aren't really tangible. And that was just a brilliant illustration of that. And then the third thing I wanted to highlight is that Gray is a truly, truly, truly gifted musician. So we're gonna link to all of his SoundCloud and all of his artful music in the description here. I'm a weekly listener to Gray Space Radio. I encourage all of you to check out his music if you like melodic house, progressive music. He's on the cutting edge of what that genre is offering. So if you're a music lover, check that out.
Thank you. That's too kind.
Yeah. Oh, stop it. We're here together because we both love that kind of music. So we've actually been like consuming music this week. That's why we're sitting here together in this room. Again, for folks who are considering an MBA, considering search, like trying to find their big post-MBA goal, whether they're currently in business school or they're considering applying, what are 2 things to know about yourself that would make search maybe a good fit for you? And then 2 other things that might say, you know what, search might not be right for you.
Yeah. I'll answer this right now where I'm at, but like I launched the fund 6 days ago. So I'm very much at the very beginning of the search process. So I'll answer it as I understand it from like an academic perspective.
I think I'm less interested in like what do you think makes someone good at search, and more like what's the personality, what are the personal qualities that make this the right choice for you now. Whether you're going to be successful or not, we'll wait and see. We'll bring Gray back later. We'll see how successful he is. But you're loving it. You're thriving in it. It's like it's giving you life. So what are the things about yourself that make you say like, yeah, if you're like this, you should consider search, and if you're not like this, or if you're like this, maybe not.
Yeah,
just from the standpoint of like fulfillment and match.
For first thing up there is like self-starter. Like it's a very lonely thing. Like I have a team of investors, but I am driving the train so fully, and like my investors can give me advice, but they're never going to tell me what to do. And so you have to be comfortable with that, because you have to be unbelievably motivated to just kind of go out and create this, pursue whatever you want to do and figure out how to make it work. That's, I think, probably if you're not confident that you can make something out of nothing, and there's a lot of templates out there for what a PPM looks like, or what a sim or like a deal document looks like. You can look at all of that stuff, but like applying that to your worldview and your investment philosophy, it's totally different.
So let me editorialize this just a little bit, because I think if you're pre-MBA and you're considering search as like what you're going to write about in your essays, or actually what you're going to do, I think the way you can vet this thing that Gray just said of like being a self-starter, being someone who can actually just like no one holding me accountable, get shit done. I think you will want to have some kind of track record of that. And so to me, that's some kind of operational role. So it's like if you've started a startup, or if you've been on a scrappy startup like team and built things. And then the military, of course, is great for that, because it's like a giant startup in some ways. There's always initiative that you have to take. You're responsible for so much at an early stage. So I think you had that confidence. And I think, I know that your investors had confidence in you, because your track record says like the buck can stop here and we can trust that things will happen.
Yeah, I think the next thing I was going to say is that your investors are going to make sure they have confidence in your integrity, and that you're going to actually put in the effort that it takes to get a search done.
So again, it's a bit of a track record, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
But I'd say more importantly than the track record, yes, track record is going to be important for the investors as they assess you. But it's a lot more. It's very similar to like the behavioral kind of assessments. Like your investors are just going to have a conversation with you, and assess who you are. And but I think more important than that is the personal decision that it's a good fit for you and what you want to achieve in the near and medium term future, and that you are inspired by it. And some people on my cap table who told me the search phase was the best 2 years of their life. They really enjoyed the independence and setting their own schedule, and just going out there and finding a company. But I think the prevailing thought that most searchers, even the successful acquired searchers, have is that the search is the not fun phase, and that the operating is the more fun phase. You get through the search to get to the operating phase. I think that's the prevailing attitude, but I also it's not a uniform thing. But you have to be able to be successful. You have to be able to like get up and do what you need to do to get things done that day. And you're not gonna have anyone telling you what to do. This is not like this is not.
There's no office. There's no cubicle. There's no boss. Yeah,
there's no boss. There's not. Even at this phase, you've got a set of investors, but it's not even really a board yet. Unless you do a committed capital pool, which is we don't need to get into that. That's one type of search, but. There's a long-term hold document on the Stanford search study that you should go look at if you're interested in committed capital pool. But yeah, it's very much a self-motivated kind of endeavor that I think you really have to be comfortable with that to know that it's right for you. which is also a big change for me. I mean, like I've done a lot of things. One of the things that got me really excited in the Navy is times when if I didn't do something or figure out how to get a team to do it, the ship was going to not get it done and fail at that mission. And that really kind of like lit me up a little bit. That's one of the ways that I figured out, like by looking back on my time in the Navy was one of the, what I did like about it and what I loved, what lit me up during that time was one of the ways I assessed whether a search was going to be a good fit. The other thing that is very important is that you're going to be a good fit to lead a small to medium-sized company. And that you know that you have like the people skills ready to do that and that you want to do that, right? So for me, I looked back at my time in the Navy and I said that like working with these sailors was what lit me up. We were oftentimes over the horizon in the middle of the ocean, sometimes without communications with the outside world. And we would, if we couldn't solve a problem with the resources and knowledge and skills and equipment with inside the ship already there, the problem was not going to get solved. That sort of like challenge, problem-solving type team leadership was probably the most energizing thing that I got to do and experience in the Navy. Working with just like the most amazing sailors, people that work for me, people that work with me, people that I worked for, really is what I look back, probably the thing I look back on most fondly. And so I was certainly looking for a role in the future that would provide that. And I thought that, I could have probably found that or created it in a startup. I figured that I could do it in search, that's kind of very core to what search is. But there were very few other roles out there where I was, going to not be working with just a bunch of other MBAs, and that just wasn't going to light me up as much. And so that was another key moment where I decided that search was the right thing for me. And I think that's a really good thing. Like if I had to do it again, or in the future when I'm looking for a major change, I will look back on life and try to assess, what I loved and didn't like about certain things and use that to kind of assess a good match for the future.
So that brings us back to where our friendship first started and the very beginning of your MBA journey. And I remember that I think you found us through MBA Mo.
I did, yes.
And so you went and you got your school report and it said, Stanford is a moonshot, you crazy dude. What are you thinking? And then we had a conversation.
Actually, it was way more complex than that.
Oh.
So that's what I was basically looking for that.
Okay.
Like I found MBA Mo.
You were looking for the bad news.
And no, I wasn't even looking for the bad news. I was looking for MBA Mo to tell me which schools to apply to.
Okay.
Like I ran it on like 20 schools.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I was looking for the top line. What are your percentage numbers? What's your odds? I was very much at the time in this grain of thinking that like it was all about odds, and if I just applied to like a bunch of schools where I had decent to high odds, I was gonna end up somewhere that I was proud of. And that was like wrong to think about it that way on so many levels. But I was looking for MBA Mo to basically tell me those pretty straightforward answers. And instead I got back this like 12-page report.
20 pages. Yeah. It's 20 pages. We'll put a link to MBA Mo. MBAMo.com went private this year. We may bring it back online. If it's back online, we'll link it down below so you can go get your own odds report.
Yeah.
But yeah,
so that was the first, like, it was like a 20-page document that talked to me about fit with the schools and fit with understanding yourself and what you want to get out of the program, rather than telling me what my odds are and what I need to say to get into a school, which is what I was definitely naively looking for, right? I was trying to assess whether this was the right path for me. I was trying to assess whether I could do it. And I was looking for straightforward, easy answers. And all of a sudden, I had somebody telling me that, hey, it's more complex. And it's about fit. And if you find the right school where you have the right fit, you will get into it. And the most important part of that is understanding who you are and communicating that effectively. And that was so different than every other place I had engaged with to that point. where basically the pitch from almost any other admissions consultant was, we can tell you what to say to get in, or we can get you in. Like that was basically the pitch from all these others, which, I mean, that sounds pretty sus. Like just on its face, it sounds like, it's like, oh, I don't know. Okay, yeah, cool. Everybody says they can tell me what to say to get in.
We'll
like,
get you in, yeah.
Sure. Like obviously not everybody get, like obviously that's basically not true. Whereas your only pitch was pretty much, I am going to help you tell your story very authentically, because who you are is what gets you into business school, not what you say. And so you were not selling me the right thing to say.
Yeah.
In fact, like you were saying, I'm pretty sure I had to like sign a document when we started working together that said you are not going to line edit my essays and do my writing for me. And like to me, I was like, this is actually what I need and want. I just need somebody to help me organize my thoughts and figure out how to put my best foot forward, and not somebody to tell me, the secrets of how to get into whatever school. And so like right then and there, I figured that out in that very first MBA Mode report. Yeah, I think you inbound emailed me like the next day, just like, hey, let's chat. I was in the middle of the ocean somewhere, and I was like, yeah, I can chat in like 3 weeks when I get back.
Yeah.
And so, that was the genesis.
The beginning of a lifelong friendship. Yeah. So, we have a ton of just spectacular success stories from our clients, people who achieve their dreams, people who maybe don't get into the top school they wanted, but still get into an amazing school, who overcome major weaknesses in their candidacy, like you epically. I mean, you must have had the lowest GPA in your Stanford class.
It had to be near the bottom. Yeah, for sure.
An MBA Mo would have told you, moonshot. Every school is a moonshot. But once we got into the process, and this is what we're always saying to everyone, it's like, it's not your scores. That is not what determines the decision. It's an input. But what really determines the outcome is who you are and how you communicate that. And so you're just one of my all-time favorite success stories, not just because of the weakness that you surmounted, but then you really did get into the best fit school for you. And the whole time we were going through the process, I was like, I don't know if you're going to get into Harvard, but Stanford, I think so.
Yeah, it was like, I think that so I applied to 9 schools. It was a lot. It was a lot of work. I actually did it. A lot of it was while I was on terminal leave, but I did a lot of the GMAT studying and stuff while I was on deployment. I would be studying at 3 a.m. on deployment. Like after I got off a watch, I would go do like an hour and a half of GMAT studying. But part of that was because, as we just mentioned, I had a really low GPA, and I don't claim to know what any admissions office is making a decision based off of, but it seems to me that they need to be sure that you can do the work in the program and keep up, and that you're not going to fail out once you get in. I knew that was not going to be represented by my GPA. I had some family health issues and stuff, and all sorts of.
There were reasons for the GPA.
Yeah, all sorts of stuff. I very frankly assessed or wrote about them in 2 or 3 sentences, explaining them, saying, hey, this is not as representative of me as it should be. And then I busted my butt and did a lot of work on the GMAT. And you had
there was that game day decision of like a couple days before the round 1 deadlines, where we had done all the preparation.
Yeah.
And then you were like, psych, I didn't get the GMAT I wanted. I'm going to take the GMAT and submit everything in round 2.
Yep.
And that was for sure the right call, because you really did. You crushed the GMAT.
I think that I think I put 50 points more on the GMAT.
Yeah, I think you were at 760.
Yeah, it was at 760. I think it was 7. I think I was sitting at 710.
I think that's right. I think you went from 710 to 760.
Weird.
So that was a strategic move, but then you got the handwritten note from Kirsten in your acceptance letter. Talk a little bit more about just how we found your story and your story and your passions are what are. It's like everything we've talked about in this conversation. It's what propels you.
So to talk specifically about the essay, Stanford's essay is what matters most to you and why. I kind of had an idea of what I wanted to talk about in that essay for years before I applied, probably. I knew what that essay was, and I had probably bounced around this idea. It was a topic, not a story.
Yeah.
And and Angela has the career protocol U-Discovery process. Is that what you're still calling it? Yeah, yeah, the U-Discovery process, where you basically go through a very personal worksheet that helps you kind of mine memories from your past about what's made you you these days. And from that, you can then start building a set of things you want to make sure come across in your application. It's fun because I think we did like an interview call to kind of like go over the process, but then I went and did the process on my own over like a couple of weeks. A lot of pondering. I think my U-Discovery document was like 35 pages when I had typed everything up, which is like huge.
Average.
Yeah.
For our clients, it's average.
It felt huge to me, but I couldn't. Once I started, I couldn't stop writing. I think I missed the deadline. Like I was like, oh, I'll get this back to you in a week, and then I think like a week and a half later, I was like, oh, I'm gonna need 2 more weeks. Like I just kept writing and kept writing.
Yeah.
So start that process early.
It's designed for that. It's designed to bring things up as you go.
Yeah. So that was just like a really fun kind of self-discovery process, which mined a lot of like things I would not have thought about. These are not things that like are like brag sheet like lists of items. Like it's not like a bullet point of your life achievements. It's actually like a very personal, introspective. What are some moments that have made you you, and like forks in the road, decisions you've made, failures you've had, particularly failures. So that's kind of how we got started on the process.
There was this like amazing sort of like up and down journey to get to the final version of the story.
Yeah.
And there were pieces that were really critical turning points that we just didn't even discover until like draft 9 or something. And I remember that very vividly, but that's getting too story geeky. Talk about how that process and what you learned about yourself and what you gained through telling your authentic story, like truly in your own words. How has that followed you, like through the MBA, during your MBA, now as you're moving forward? Because our goal was not just to get you into school, but to give you this solid foundation, not just of self-knowledge, but also of like communication collateral that you can then carry way beyond the MBA.
Yeah, I'll actually start, and I'm going to jump around on a timeline here. I'm going to start with something I said to my husband right after I had pretty much pushed send on all of the applications. Like the 9th one had gone in, which I think the 9th one was Stanford. I think that was the last submission. Probably like 3 days later, over dinner, I'm like, starting like the 4-month wait for interview invites. And I just said to my husband, well, I don't care what the outcome is at all. Like if I don't get into any of these 9 schools, it's not a good fit for me, because I could not have more authentically represented myself than I did in these applications. And if that is not a fit at any of these schools, then it's truly not a fit, and it would be the wrong decision for me to go do them. That's how I felt, and that's because of working with you. I had represented myself as fully and thought about everything as thoughtfully as I thought was possible, and so I was just happy. Which is, generally if I don't know the answer to something, I am like in a state of trying to figure that out. So it was very kind of fun and surprising for me to be at a place of such peace when I have, spent the last 2 years working on grad school applications, and now I'm sitting to wait.
Unknown,
So that's where I wanted to start with that answer. And it's because I felt like I knew myself better at that point in time than I ever had. And so then it's kind of changed my thinking about myself and how I represent myself. It certainly popped back up in interviews, both interviews for jobs as well as interviews, if you will, conversations with potential investors. I'm able to like really show them who I am and kind of what has made me me. And I think that authentic representation helped just accelerate the process of us getting to know and trust each other better. And probably had some impact on my successful raising of the search fund. So that's kind of where that went.
That's amazing. Well, when I know you, and I've learned this from you, but I've also heard it from all of my other clients and friends who are investors. It's like when you're investing in an early stage opportunity, it's like 80% about the team. It's about the person. The idea is important, but it's not about that really. It's about like the person. They're investing in you because you're going to do all the work. You're the one who's going to make it happen. And if they don't believe in you, then they can't, they wouldn't put their money into that. And so I feel like I know you maybe better than anyone except your husband. We'll give Connor the edge on that
And
one.
my sister.
And your sister.
And my mom.
And your mom.
But yes,
so
aside from
immediate family members.
Immediate family members.
Immediately family members. And so this is maybe a cool moment because like I'm actually an investor in your search fund. So I'm actually gonna like write you the check right now.
Let's go.
Because like this is kind of a fun thing to do. Why not? But like this was you reached out to me and you're like, hey, no pressure. But I feel like you deserve the right to invest.
Yeah,
no
truly.
pressure at all.
I kind of want to elaborate on that.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, so I have 11 kind of what you would consider traditional or institutional investors on my search fund, cap table of investors, and then I have 3. People that are investing at like a friends and family size round. And I just wanted to offer that to Angela because hey, odds are that this might not work out. But it's an opportunity. You've helped make this as an opportunity for me. And so I wanted to just kind of pay it back to you. Just have you along for the ride and
yeah, well, and for me it's like it was such an easy decision. First of all, because I share your passion for music. I know that you will create something valuable in a space of art that's really important to me as well. But it's also this idea of like, there's almost no one I would trust more with like my little investment here to like turn it into something great. Because I know you so well. I know who you are fully.
That means a lot.
Who do I write it out to? Remix Growth?
Remix Growth?
LLC. Remix Growth, LLC. We'll link to Remix Growth's website in the comments section so you can follow the journey that Gray is about to take here. I'm so excited. Did I do everything right?
Absolutely.
Okay, awesome. Exciting! Woo. All right. Anything else you want to say before we say goodbye to the MBA Monday audience?
Yeah, like I think we started out talking about how an MBA can do almost anything for you, but it really is about you doing it. Like that's something that people told me going in, and I didn't quite have my head wrapped around that this MBA wasn't a little magic box that was going to turn me into a VC investor or entrepreneur or anything I wanted to simply because I went to a good school. I think that understanding that is probably something that the admissions committees are kind of looking to assess, that like, hey, you've got a realistic idea of what this program can do, and not an idea that like it's going to do something for you that that
it's not going to do it to you. It's going to
exactly.
Well, and I think that's a brilliant comment, and I just want to add to that. You also don't have to have it all figured out, because it's like, whatever you think the MBA is, it'll be different when you get there. Like, I said what Gray just said. I said it to him like 25 times, but you can't really get it until you're there. So if that comment makes you nervous or concerned, I think don't. Just trust yourself. Like, as long as you're willing to roll up your sleeves and figure things out once you get there, which you probably wouldn't be considering an MBA if you hadn't already done that in your past. So just trust yourself and just know that there's still going to be a climb and you're still going to have to learn a lot. And if you keep that perspective, then apply, get in, go, it will do so much for your future if it is indeed the right fit for you.
Yeah. I would say you touched on something there that I also want to I had a little bit of kind of apprehension on staking some ground in an application about what I wanted to do, and it felt a little disingenuous to say something so firmly. But like, it shouldn't. That's a little bit of an imposter syndrome-ish thing creeping in there, because like ultimately, what is an MBA program? It's a transformative 2-year program. Like the school expects you to change and learn and grow. And if your goals don't change and learn and grow while you are in the program, then like they're not doing their job. And so like if you show up on day one, it's, with a new plan because you had some 4 months to figure out your life after you left your last job before you started the MBA program, or even a week, to do some self-reflection and some maybe pre-networking or whatever it is that you do to get ready to go to the MBA program. The school expects that and wants to see that, quite frankly, I think. I mean...
Absolutely. But I think the important thing is that what you did write about in your essays, while the industry hypothesis changed, the core thing that was driving you, your motivation and your kind of vision for who you wanted to be post-MBA, that was, you nailed that. That didn't change.
Yeah, but I also think that like the other thing that's probably really important is that you've done like the research on the school and the the possible career outcomes that you are able to demonstrate that you know what you're trying to achieve and that the school via these means is going to help you get closer to that, and you're going to do these other things in addition while you're in school to try to get closer to that. And then the application is just a snapshot in time. Like you've done that, and like the school's expecting you to do that again and again and again. As your interest changes, you go to a career night that they offer and meet a VC investor, and all of a sudden this becomes a new interest or goal. You're going to redo that process again and again and again. Yeah. And with more knowledge and more help from the school. And so don't feel inauthentic. It needs to be authentic, but it's a snapshot in time.
But this is the point. It's like the specifics of what's the goal, it's the what, right? Yeah. The what will change, but who you are won't. Yeah. And so I think that's like my key message, and it's like in every video. It's like you have to really know yourself and then express that honestly, but in an inspiring and authentic way. Yeah. And then whatever the plan is, they'll look at that and they'll say, okay, well, maybe he's not going to do the environment, but we know that this is someone who genuinely views themselves as a leader who will stand up for what he believes in and who believes in making the world a better place. And so we can trust that he's gonna sort out the specifics.
Yeah, the school doesn't have some normative view on what a good career is. Right. Like they don't care, they're not trying to say, oh, we're gonna have this exact number of venture investors or this exact number of private equity. There's no normative view on entrepreneurs is the best thing to do to go to Stanford.
They want integrous leaders, and to present that picture in a compelling way, you have to have really thought through your vision and the meaning behind it. Even if the specifics change, the drive has to be fully expressed, and I think that's kind of ultimately the career protocol journey. It's like you start with the past, then you are looking at the future, and then we're building out this continuum of a life story that starts at the beginning and tracks way into the future, but the whole thing is authentic and consistent. I mean, I think that's what you're pointing to. And so I'm harping on this right now because it's so tempting to punt on the goals. Because what we're saying is you're gonna get a pass. If you get to campus and you change your goals, they're fine with that. But that doesn't mean that what you write about in your essays can be a throwaway or something that sounds good or something. Yeah. There has to be real meat behind it in terms of your genuine passion and motivation. Yeah. And if you have that, then the rest will work out.
Yeah, I think you gotta talk about it in the context of who you are and who you want to be and where you're gonna go or what you're gonna go through to change that.
And then how the school
is part of that.
To your point, exactly.
So again, it has to be authentic, it has to be something you actually want to do. Yeah. But it isn't a set in stone thing that it's just
Don't be intimidated by goals or by what's required of you to think through your future in the process, but also take that really seriously and with a lot of self-love and attention and joy, because you're painting the picture of your future. And whether that future comes to fruition or a different one does, the act of creating it and saying it takes you to that next step within yourself and with schools, I think. Okay, well, This has been amazing. Great. Thank you so much for joining me here in the MBA Monday studio. I think we have another show to get to here, don't we? So we'll call it a day for now. Thank you so much for joining. We'll see you back here next week on MBA Monday.
Cheers.